So I want to make a video on can modern marriages work? And I wanted to first start out by talking about some of the issues facing modern marriages. So the first thing is that I feel that there's a lack of cultural reinforcement of marriage. I think that the last decade has been absolutely dominated by social justice and identity politics. So men and women have really we haven't been focused on families. We've been focused on you know tearing down the status quo, challenging everything, and certainly has not been a lot of propping up and prioritizing the family unit. And so I think that that's massively affected our ability to have marriages that are successful and understand the roles that we are expected to play to make a marriage work, and understanding the value that we get out of being in a marriage. I think we've by challenging and tearing down these structures, we've focused a lot on what you're giving up to be in a marriage or the downsides of a marriage, but we've massively moved away from focusing on the upside. And I think that's a problem, because it makes marriage much less attractive to people. Why would you get into a marriage if people are screaming from the rooftops about all of the terrible things that are going to happen to you if you get married? The media, when I was a kid, there was a lot of shows that were family sitcoms that showed men and women making families work. They showed, a husband and wife in a lighthearted manner, in a comedy show dealing with, very serious issues with kids, such as kids lying or kids not having follow through, or, succumbing to peer pressure or drugs and alcohol. It showed parents in a position to intervene and to, it showed the parents providing a value and a service to their family. And at the end of the day, we all, men and women, all want to feel valued. We want to feel like we have a place and we have a purpose and we're providing value. All right. And the family unit is something that provides that for us. It provides a stable and structured way to do that. But the media effectively is just not showing the family sitcoms died back in the 90s. So it's kind of a lost thing. But if you think about it, it was something that was pervasive among our society. And if you had a child that lived in a family that was not picture perfect, they could turn on the TV and they could see an example of what it is. So maybe in the future, they could aspire to have a family of their own, despite the fact that maybe they're in a family where there's abuse or it's just massively dysfunctional. So for me, I feel like the media at that time served a really great purpose, a societal level purpose. Media at this point, I think media really struggles to show what a family looks like. I think media struggles to show that because I think our society is struggling with what a family looks like and how a functional family works. And that's why I'm making this video. I think religion has declined a lot. When I was a kid, going to church, the pastor would talk about the priority of things. You have God, you have your spouse, you have your kids, you have your community, and then you have your job. I think that with the decline of religion, we've seen people's priorities we have not reinforced that idea that marriage and family are at the top of the food chain there. So not having that societal level enforcement of marriage, I think, has massively taken away the emphasis and taken away that push for people to pursue it. Another issue that's another challenge to modern marriage is that men have been very much rejecting marriage. A lot of men have gathered together online and told each other, you really don't want to get married, because what's going to happen is you're going to get married, you're going to have a couple kids, and then the woman's going to be, like, turn on a dime and say, I don't want this. I want happiness. I'm not happy in this marriage. I don't feel valued, and I want to go out there and I want to experience life. So here's divorce papers. And then the man's going to go through a biased court system and basically, get his ass handed to him, and then have to pay for child support, alimony, not see his kids, and things like that. So the internet now is massively dominated by men pushing other men to not get married. And a lot of men out there are saying, I'm much happier being single. I don't have to deal with the drama of a woman, ultimately falling in love with me and then breaking up and taking half my stuff. And just, it's just too much for men. So this to me is a really interesting phenomenon, but to me, I think it's important that we recognize this is a very real phenomenon, and it's here, and we need to address it. If we're going to move forward and have marriage be revitalized, we need to address the concerns that a lot of men are bringing up, and chief among them is a lot of men are saying, there's no way I would get married unless they change the laws. A lot of men feel that there's a huge bias in the laws against men. The next challenge, I think, is that people want it all. I think people want, social media shows glamorous lifestyles with vacations and expensive houses and nice cars, and marriage is a grind. Marriage and parenthood are not particularly glamorous. It's extremely hard work, and it's hard when you are going into something with rose-colored glasses and thinking that this is going to be a cakewalk and I'm going to get so much happiness out of this. And at the end of the day, when you get married and as soon as you have kids, it's really hard. The marriage shifts. It's very difficult to have a romantic relationship when you're taking care of kids under 3, and your life becomes all about taking care of kids, and you're giving up a lot. You're sacrificing a lot, and you don't get to just go out on a whim and do whatever you want. And you have to go heads down for a long time. Then after that phase, the kids are in a phase where that's kind of like a really great phase, is when the kids are old enough to, be autonomous to some degree, but they still are really big into the family stuff. And that's a short amount of time. If you're a parent, you realize that's a shorter amount of time than you'd like. And those are kind of like the golden years, where you're not changing diapers and you can go on these awesome trips and it's really focused on the family. But after that, the kids turn 11 or 12, and now all of a sudden the kids start pulling away. The kids cop an attitude, and it becomes very difficult to manage with a teenager. So, and then those years are hard because you're working hard, and you're working hard to give your kids a great life, but the kids are not in a age where they can really appreciate it, and they need a lot of guidance, but they're very stubborn, and they want to say that mom and dad don't know anything, and they want to prove that they know something. So all in all, marriage and parenthood is kind of a shit show in large. And at the same time, you're carting them around to all these activities and sporting events, while you're also trying to maintain a semblance of a romantic relationship with your spouse. And your work is always going to go up and down, and the economy goes up and down. So there's a massive amount of stress placed on people. So marriage and family is never easy. And so I think that in a society where we are we don't place value on it, and we're not pushing people towards it. Again, if we focus on all of the negative things in being married or having children, then it's not going to entice people to kind of go and do it, because at the end of the day, it's a job. It is a job, but just like going to a job where you put in work and you get a reward, marriage and parenthood is the same way. It's a job. But through doing the job and doing the job well and caring about doing the job well, you get a reward. You have a sense of doing a good work. You have a sense of purpose, and you have a sense of value being placed on the work that you're doing, and value placed on yourself, and deriving a lot of purpose and fulfillment out of it. The next thing I wanted to, moving on, I want to talk about is men and women are not finding a good balance. So this is, I think, a hotly contested one, and probably the most controversial part of what I want to talk about. Women typically work, and they also end up taking on most of the domestic duties. I think that it's very often that men prioritize relaxing more than women. I think that women are much more prone to running themselves ragged and exhausting themselves, because women typically have this internal drive to pick up the slack and get everything done. I was listening to somebody the other day, and they were talking about how sometimes the wife will she wants to clean up the kitchen before the end of the night, right? So she's probably had a long day of working. Maybe she made dinner for the family. Maybe she, had to take a kid to therapy or had to take a kid to soccer practice. She's coming home and, she's pushing kids to do homework. And then at the end of it, the kitchen's dirty. So she wants to clean up the kitchen because when she wakes up, she wants to feel that she's starting fresh and she's got, clean slate in the morning. I think that it's so funny because my wife had, my wife had one of those days, and I was trying to tell her. I said, "Look, it's just too much. You need a break. Let's just the dishes will be there tomorrow, and we'll do them tomorrow." And she really didn't want to stop, even though she was well past the point of being exhausted and overly stressed. So that is a very real thing. I think that men can sometimes just feel like. It's time for a break. I think that I honestly think that men are more prone towards, we'll leave it for tomorrow. And I think that women are, once they get on that bandwagon of doing so much, they just continue on that. And sometimes they don't take the breaks that they desperately need. Historically, women would take care of the home and men would work. Now, with women working and doing most of the housework, men can often feel like the woman is leading everything. And I think that can be very detrimental to a relationship. I think that men need to feel valued in order to put forth sustained effort in the long run. So if a man is getting outworked by his wife consistently, then it can feel very difficult to feel valued. Many would say, well, men just need to do more to pitch in around the house. This is fine in theory, but I personally believe that there's more biological programming at play than our feminist gender equity lens wants to admit. People desperately want to point to traditional gender roles as being a societal construct and deprecated, but I disagree. I think women grow humans inside of them. Babies feed from their chests. I think women have a natural tendency towards caretaking, and I think that's evidenced by the fact that daycare and primary schools are dominated by women, and the same with the nursing sector. I think women will always have an edge on men when it comes to caretaking. So, with that, I think women are feeling exhausted and underappreciated, and men feel undervalued and emasculated, not seeing where they can lead in the relationship. And if a man doesn't feel like he can lead in the relationship, then he doesn't feel very manly. That's a simple fact. If women don't feel valued, they will ultimately jump ship and leave. If men don't feel valued, they will shut down and stop trying. Both men and women must feel valued in order for a marriage to work. But the million dollar question is, how do we achieve that? So for me, my solution that I'm proposing is that we need to embrace our genders much more than we are now. Women on the whole make better caretakers than men. That's my opinion, and I'm sticking to it. As such, as much as we'd like to push men towards the 50-50 of domestic duties, it's much more likely that women will always feel more of a burden. And, we need to be real about that. I think the solution there is, a man must commit himself to helping his wife as much as he can, but also embrace the fact that she is probably going to be the leader in this area. Women are really good at planning the calendar for the family, juggling logistics with kids, and making to-do lists for the house. The man should appreciate all of these things that the wife is doing for the family. And in order, again, I think that the man absolutely should do his best to help out. If the woman is cooking, maybe he's washing the dishes, and maybe he's putting away the food, striking that balance so that you feel like you're operating as a team. But also, in order to make up for the discrepancy in domestic duties, I think that the man should always show gratitude towards his wife and also lead in the romance department of the relationship. He should buy her flowers and to show her how much he values her. He should plan date nights and take her out regularly. He should compliment her often. The other way that men can lead in a marriage is managing conflict in the home, helping his wife navigate emotional situations and being supportive of her at all times, and taking serious the role of being a protector both physically and emotionally for the family. I think, somebody I was talking to recently, a woman was saying, look, women take care of everybody. Women take care of the kids. Women take care of the man oftentimes. And so it's the man's job to take care of the woman, and I firmly agree with that. I think that Women do so much for the family, and the way that a man can really lead is by taking care of his wife, by checking in with her and making sure that she's in a good emotional state. If she is, had a bad day at work, he needs to, show that he really truly cares about listening to what she's going through and helping her vent, helping her, feel validated and seen and heard. That's a man's job, in a marriage, is to take care of his wife. And, in this way, both the man and the woman are leading in the relationship, and both are putting in time and effort, and both feel valued. So, I just want to conclude by saying, if we're going to fix marriage in the U.S., then we must dial back the identity politics. Men and women cannot make a relationship work when we are on opposite sides of an ideological fence, and both men and women are guilty of extremism at this point. We need to cut the shit and acknowledge that life is better when men and women work together to figure out how marriages work. At the end of the day, a marriage is about forming a lifelong commitment with a partner in life. It provides a structure and stability. It provides purpose. And when both people are working hard every day towards making it work, it provides a great amount of fulfillment. I'm passionate about moving this conversation along, but I'd love to hear what you have to say about it. So please let me know what you think in the comments section. And if you like this video, please like and subscribe. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you in the next one. Bye.